All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. Uh, it's a very important topic that we all wanted to discuss today. And we wanted to make sure that we can get the message out before this happens. But before we talk about what the issue is, the ramifications for the Indian American community, because I think the ramifications are quite far reaching. Maybe people don't realize how far reaching. And we can get into that during this conversation as well. But before we really get into the weeds, I want to welcome to the show Pushpita Prasad from Kona and Aldrin Deepak. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Namaste.
So before we get started, I'll start with Pushpita ji. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Kona as well?
Sure. Thanks for having us on, Sham. Very excited to be here. My name is Pushpita Prasad. I live in California Bay Area, and I'm a long time person living and working here in the tech industry. Worked at different places, and I come from a mass media communications journalism sort of background. I got really interested and passionate about this topic and joined Kona right about the time it was formed. And just because we see the need for the Hindu community to really get a voice for itself. So Kona stands for the Coalition of Hindus of North America. And we are a 501c grassroots advocacy organization. What does grassroots mean? And I think that is something pretty unique to us, is that I think Kona is a platform that literally takes concerned individuals or passionate individuals and gives them a platform in which their efforts are streamlined and amplified. So I think it's truly, like I like to say, it's the power of 2 plus 2 adding up to like 6 or 10.
Right.
And I think that's what really makes the difference and it's really important because in the US and in Canada, that's the two countries we focus on. In both of these places, we live in democracies which depend upon us talking about ourselves. And when we don't talk about ourselves, which I think the Hindu community has been guilty of, then others talk for us.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we get organized and we talk for ourselves, and that we do that in every situation that we find ourselves in, whether it's our schools, whether it's our communities, whether it's our workplaces, and of course up the political chain, whoever your lawmakers are.
Right.
So I can give more about Kona, but I'll let Aldrin ji speak for himself.
Aldrin ji, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background too.
Hi. Namaste. My name is Aldrin, and I work with Kona. I belong to the steering committee in Kona. And I've been living in America for the last 35 years. And I got involved with Kona with all this shenanigans started a while ago. I come from a Dalit community, and I just was appalled by all the things that was happening, and I wanted to have my voice heard. So I was looking for it, and thanks to you, Sham, because of you, I found Kona. I was watching your show. I'm a big fan of your show, so I was watching your show, and then I saw Nikunji, Sudaji, once Ashobaji, I think. So that's when I reached out to Kona, and Kona was wonderful. And then they basically took me in, and we had like a wonderful conversation. And here we are talking about what is affecting our community and why we should be, pay attention to it.
Right. I want to start with why we came here today a little bit, because I want to talk about this resolution. And I'm not sure how many people watching this video are going to be aware of this, but there's a resolution that is currently being tabled in, see if I can pull it up somewhere.
An ordinance, actually.
Oh, it's an ordinance.
Yeah, it's more dangerous than a resolution.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because this can become law.
Okay. So this is what it is. It's a anti-caste discrimination law is being tabled in Seattle. So District 3 City Council member Kshama Sawant is seeking to add caste discrimination as a form of prejudice outlawed in Seattle workplaces, adding to a list that includes gender, age, race, and sexual orientation. The blurb is that the caste discrimination doesn't only take place in other countries, it is faced by South Asian American and other immigrant working people in their workplaces, including the tech sector in Seattle and in cities around the country. Sawant, a socialist who recently announced she will leave the council when her term expires at the end of the year, said Tuesday at a news conference. So this is essentially what is happening is, and I want either of you guys who want to take this to explain a little bit about what this resolution is and why people considering passing it. Whoever wants to take it. Pushpita ji, you want to take it?
Pushpita ji, go ahead. Go ahead, Pushpita ji.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I think yes, like you said, unfortunately, many people don't realize, but Seattle is considering an ordinance, and I think that's what
Okay.
makes it a little bit more different and more dangerous than some of the CAA stuff that's happened in the past, because resolutions are just sort of non-binding things, and resolutions on India make no impact to India. This is an ordinance which could become law as soon, because it's being voted on next week on Tuesday, February 21st, and it will impact everybody living in Seattle. And if you think about who are the big tech companies that are headquartered in Seattle, obviously they have to comply with laws. So immediately the tech industry becomes compliant to this, and once the 2-3 big behemoths based out of Seattle be compliant in this, the rest of the tech industry will follow, like, I don't know, 6 months, whatever. So this is a very direct and very strategic attack right at the heart of where the Indian American, the Hindu American, and the South Asian community lives, works, etc. So really, really should not be underestimated. This ordinance, like you said, seeks to add caste as a protected category. Now, what is generally what counts as protected categories in the U.S. are things like national origin, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age. Are you from a military background? Those kind of things, right? And so I think why it's dangerous is it sounds like a good law. Why would you not be against discrimination, right? Who are these horrible group of people that by law want the ability to discriminate? So it's a really easy legislation to get passed because it seems to be doing good and there are no obvious victims. The dangerous part, obviously, is in what caste is and what it means, right? So all these other terms that I mentioned, race, sexual orientation, gender, ethnicity, everybody has one of them, right? It's these are not exclusive to one group of people. Whereas caste, and as people understand it, and even as the ordinance defines it, is being targeted only for one group of people in the world, and that is South Asians. So, right on. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm
And
not going to
it
pronounce.
also appears to me, Pushpita ji, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when they mention South Asians, which means they're mentioning, when they talk about South Asia, they're probably also talking about Pakistan and Bangladesh. But they're not talking about caste-based discrimination in Muslim communities. They're specifically talking about caste-based discrimination in Hindu communities.
Yeah, so this is sort of a play of hand, and it's evolved. So if you look at, I'll come back to it in a second, Sam. Just let me
Sure,
get to
sure.
it. So so the dangerous part is that you're singling out one community, and if this gets passed, the city of Seattle is effectively going to set up a commission to monitor just one community, and effectively the city is saying that one community in the world, South Asians, tends to discriminate or have more hierarchy than every other human group in the world. If I don't care what background you are, you don't have to be South Asian. Fundamentally, that is wrong. We are grounded on the principles of equality, and is the diverse city of Seattle now really saying that genetically one group is more programmed to discriminate?
Yeah.
There's a very fundamental problem right there, by which this law should be opposed. The other piece of it is, what you were how it will get applied, and it's a complete lack of people. Nobody can really define caste in the world. So who's going to sit and decide this? Who's going to be the judge, jury, and executioner of what is a caste discrimination? Who is upper? Who is lower? Who was in the harm? Well, it'll be the same set of people who have helped drive and get us to this point.
Yeah.
So there's the danger of one set of very ideological activists becoming judge, jury, and executioner on a thing, on a problem that they have effectively helped create, is what I like to say. And a very secretive group, which gets me to who they're targeting, right? So if you look at I don't know how many of your listeners are aware, but caste has become a very big issue plaguing the community since 2020. And I think the driving force behind it has been consistently one organization called Equality Labs, which created a survey back in 2016, 2018. And that is the one and only piece of data that you will hear over and over and over again ad nauseum. The data from that survey is the only quote unquote proof that is ever provided of any systemic caste discrimination happening in America. Now, the problem with this, so you can say, okay, it sounds good that somebody did a survey and now there's a problem. Well, several problems with that survey. First of all, right when the survey was published, many organizations, many Hindu Americans and other organizations wrote about this survey. It was an extremely poorly done survey. I think it would probably not have made its way through a basic stats 101 class in college. So lots of holes, select questions were dropped. The way they picked the sample size, how you proceeded down. So there's a lot of data and a lot of articles out there from 2018. So it's not new that we're rebutting it.
Yeah.
This survey should never have been used for anything. Then in 2021, Carnegie Endowment, which is a mainstream American research organization, not a Hindu organization, not an Indian American or a South Asian organization, they did a survey of Indian American attitudes and things like that. And I would advise everybody to look it up. They did a survey, and one of the things they measured was caste, and they found that there was staggeringly low awareness of caste consciousness among Hindu Americans. Unfortunately, they only asked the caste question to Hindus in their sample group.
Sure.
But I think if I remember the numbers correctly, and I'll pull them up while Aldrin is talking. So I think it was around almost 50% had zero to very little awareness of caste. Like literally, I don't know my caste to I kind of know caste, but I exist, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Another 25 that said it has some impact, and then a 23% that sort of said yes, it has some impact on the formation of my networks. Which again, we've done an article which shows that that 23% is actually nothing compared to how mainstream Americans form their networks. So if you look at how Baptists come together or how Presbyterians come together, the church is like 80% of their network.
Right.
So it sounds terrible. So before anybody jumps on and says, oh, that 23%, that's the casteist group I was talking about. Well, it's only 23%. And, people born and brought up here, you will find that, 70, 80% of their networks come from there. And again, that's not unusual. Most people are born in communities. They're proud of the communities they're born in. And they tend to cluster with people that think like them or that share their same values. So again, you're taking aspects of human behavior that are okay when other people do it, but become a quote unquote problem when South Asians do it. And that fundamentally is the problem with this survey. Aldrin, did you want to add to that?
Well, I'll basically tell you why I got involved. I think the Pushpita ji gave basically what's going on all around. What bothered me the most was when I read Cisco Case, right? And basically the lawyers have written about Dalits. Dalits are oppressed, dark-skinned, uneducated people. Now I just saw this one and I was just flabbergasted, how much ignorance you have to write something like that. In my family, I have all spectrum of colors and all education level in my family, right? And not only that, into how are you going to specifically identify who is Dalit and who is not Dalit? I mean, so oppression wherever happens, it happens in every part of the world, and we all should support to eliminate oppression and any kind of discrimination. But to blanket statements like that is a very dangerous thing. And this is what made me very upset and very unhappy about it. And I just basically started looking to express my concern about what's going on. I have lived now in United States for past 35 years. Not once that when I meet Indians, they will ask you what caste you are. They'll ask you which state you're from. Yeah. Right? They'll ask you what kind of food you like. They'll ask you where do you go for a vacation? Do you go to Goa or do you go to temples? Right? Those are the questions you ask, but nobody ever asked me, let me ask you before I talk to you what caste you are. And this kind of absurdities that pisses me off, right? As I'm living here for the past 35 years, I have had such great interactions with Indians, and I've had such great interactions with religious community, right? Like I go to temples, I'm very much interested in our dharma, and I went to our local temple, right, Shiva Vishnu temple. I go there, and they never ever once asked me what caste I come from. I have gone and worshipped there. I have gone and decorated the vigraha of the Visarjana vigraha myself. Nobody ever asked me, wait a minute, just before you come and touch our sacred God, I want to know, are you dirty? Are you not dirty? You know what I mean? These kind of absurdity is what pisses me off. It's not that you want to do something good for the community, but don't you think that you have to understand that community before you jump in and start making blanket statement? This is recolonization of us all over again, because we obviously are not capable of taking care of our own affairs in our community, that somebody else have to jump in and say, oh, let's tell you like what you're capable of and how horrible you people are, because we have been doing that for 250 years to you. So now we will also do it again because you moved over, but let's tell you what you can do. This is the part that really, really upsets me, because if they were fair about it, if they had as many Dalits as this so-called representing South Asian come and make statements about how horrible South Asians are, I understand. At least there is a dialogue there. At least there are representations there. But you cannot say that I'm speaking for a Dalit and there is no Dalits present. Why aren't in all this conversation, why are these highly educated, the so-called, they say that they're not Savarna, we don't want anything to do with that, but when it is convenient for them, they assert themselves as we are Savarna, we have oppressed, so we want to make sure that nobody get oppressed. Now you live in United States, who cares about your damn Savarna? Nobody does. And how are you asserting yourself? Didn't you just say that you don't like these things, so you don't want to do this thing? Suddenly, why you're sitting in these universities where they're taught you to be equal among everybody, and you're saying I qualify myself a higher class, so I get to tell what these lower class people who are not educated, who are dark skinned, who are oppressed, we will tell you how you should go forward. Don't you think that you should bring us in and say, hey, tell us about your community. What do you know about my community? What do you know about Dalit community? Nothing. Besides the part that you're sitting there and we're calling us Dalit, you have no idea what my community is. So this is a wrong thing. And every time that we go and speak about this, right? I'm not saying that don't do this. I'm saying let's have a dialogue. Let's find out what we really need. What have you done? You know, like every time when I needed, I was living in America, and my support system was my Hindu community. My support system was my spirituality. My support system was my temples. Do you see what I'm saying? So why are you trying to tell me that I don't belong to this? You're telling me you don't belong to this. They don't like you. They hate you. So you should get away from them. And these are the things that only, draw wedges between the people. And the second thing is, like, when you look at how they're categorizing as a Dalit, if you're a light-skinned person, let's say this Seattle thing goes through and the universities decide to put this thing in their academies, and then this trickles down to everybody else. The corporations will look at you, and if you're a light-skinned Indian, regardless of your Dalit or not, because there are many light-skinned Indians who are Dalits, then as soon as you come for an interview, they will look at you and go, oh my God, this guy could discriminate against the Dalits, so we will not hire him, right? Or they will have a second thought to say, should we? And what are the consequences for us to hire this guy, because this is good? And then they're going to make this assumption based on that. And I have lived in America for like the last 35 years, where I have had so many foreigners come and tell me that they have been to India and there is caste system. Not one could tell that I was a Dalit. Now, how are you going to tell who is a Dalit? Like, if I bring you 10 Indians, would you be able to say who is the Dalit?
Yeah, it's impossible.
Right? Right.
Yeah,
So this is the problem that I have with this whole entire thing. Not that you want to do something good so you can go on with your life and think, oh, I'm such a good person, I'm such a moral person. It's
yeah,
all good for me. If everybody needs that, go and do it. But what you're doing is damaging my community, my society, my people, right? And this is why I have a problem with this thing.
yeah,
You have to bring us to the table, like you're making a decision to us. Bring us to the. You don't get to call me, oh, you're a Hindutvawadi, you're that wadi. I can call you a leftist. You're a, you're a hater of everything South Asian. There is like something very very innate hatred towards South. Can I say that you have innate hatred towards South Asian? That's why you're doing it.
mm,
You don't get to say that. I won't say that to you. Whatever the
mm,
reason that you have, that's fine. But you need to bring me to the table and you need to sit down and ask
yeah,
us. Ask us. We will tell you, like, okay, we are not saying we are perfect people, but you cannot say you are perfect, so you can make decision for us. And that's my point.
yeah.
Yes, I think
I
that's the issue, that this tendency to label and speak for others, because we are not denying, like Aldrin said, certainly there is discrimination, hierarchy, oppression among Indians in India, Indians here,
mm,
South Asians everywhere, but no more or no less than what you find among any other human group.
yeah,
Which goes back to my original point, is that if you want a law, it needs to be applicable to everybody. The very fundamental of discrimination is when you attribute things to one community. That is how stereotyping starts. That is how otherizing starts, when you attribute things to one community that you don't attribute to others. So that is fundamentally, whether you're South Asian or not, you should be very disturbed when state act. And again, private actors can do what they want.
yeah.
So I don't know if I can share and show some stuff, Sham.
Sure.
But I mentioned equality labs, and it's really important for people to understand that this is not an objective actor. This is a group that is very secretive. They are generally sometimes perceived as a research organization, an NGO, whatever. They're not. They're not a 501(c). Nobody really knows. In the Bay Area, there are lots of secretly stealth-funded startups,
Right.
which is fine. But then they shouldn't get to decide policy, because
Yeah.
this is a group where, if I can share, you can see that they have put out, their co-founder and political director used to put out tweets saying that Hinduism is oppressive and needs to be demolished. And they have actually called the entire Savarna community, which again, they never define what a Savarna is. It's a very convenient term. Sometimes the same jati becomes Bahujan, and the same jati becomes Savarna, based on what story they're trying to
Yeah.
spin. But they actually had a whole event, a webinar, which said why Savarnas rape.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm sorry, can you? And this was something that sat on their Twitter, like it sat for like a year
Right.
before they took it off. And can you imagine an organization that is supported by universities and cities
Yeah.
that says that about anybody else? That basically says millions of you are rapists, simply because you're born into a certain uh, community.
Yeah.
I don't think it would ever fly, and it's actually shocking what the South Asian, Hindu American, Indian American, whatever label you want to use for yourselves, we have brought ourselves to a state where people get away with labeling us like this, and they actually get mainstreamed as diversity champions despite these kinds of statements. So I don't know if I can share. If I could share, I'll show you some of the
Yeah.
stuff.
If you can send it to me in the chat here, if you can see the
Okay,
chat in the window, if you can just put it in there, and I'll be able to pull it up for you.
okay.
Yeah.
I will try to find it as we speak.
Yeah. It
Oh,
says you'll be
I
able to
see it
see like a private
now.
chat
Yeah, yeah, I see
window
it.
there.
So I think the other point, when you were asking about who is it targeting, so we have seen an evolution in the language of equality labs. So if you look at our website, which is cohna.org, we have a whole page called the Decolonize page, and it's a pretty built out page by now. But we first started with the Cisco case, then the UC Davis student resolution came, followed by the Cal State resolution. you can see a progression in how they're talking about Hinduism and sanitizing their language. So in the UC Davis one, and even in Cal State, UC Davis they quite clearly refer to the Rig Veda and the the forge the
Very
so
nice.
they go from naming deities and the the shlokas and everything, and
Yeah.
then as the community started realizing what's going on and started pushing back, they started sanitizing their language. So and they started deleting some of these things that we are talking about. Of course the internet doesn't forget, and so you can still find them all there in archive places. But yeah, there has been this sanitizing of how they present themselves. And my point always is that at the end of the day, this is a group that has never actually they've removed what they said, but they never took it back. They've never apologized. They've never, I can understand. They can move on and say, look, we were kind of young and fiery and we were like trying to
Yeah.
make our name and we said all these things. Now we're more responsible. We've grown up, but that has never happened. They've just kind of sanitized their website and their Twitters, but you don't really, they've never really changed anything. And that survey that we mentioned on the basis of which everything is constructed, that has never been updated or redacted or
Yeah.
refined either.
Or
So
or it has taken into account sort of the findings of Carnegie Endowment or the questions that other organizations have raised. They've never really addressed those questions or those criticisms either, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
it reflects really poorly on the city of Seattle and the lady Kshama Sawant, that you've only taken into account this survey, a survey which has been alleged to be completely full of holes, completely full of bad methodology, completely full of confirmation bias. You haven't taken into account any of the objections that other organizations have raised. You haven't taken into account the Carnegie Endowment study, which is arguably a much better conducted study. So it raises a question on the city of Seattle as well, that are you just trying to do this to help people? Is that your real motive, or your real motive is to push a particular political ideological agenda? Is that the motive? Because if you're just saying ki, this is all I'm going to accept, everything else that contradicts it is going to go out the window, I'm not going to use it, I'm not going to take it into account, then it looks like you're biased.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, like, when you make accusation against somebody, you need to allow them, and this is a democratic country, right? You
Yeah.
need to allow them to be able to say what you're saying, that we agree or disagree, that if it is truth or not truth. But you don't even get to say that. Like, as soon as you question them, oh, you're a Sanghi, oh, you're a right winger. But if you call me right winger, you're a leftist. That
Yeah.
means you have a far right left idea as well. So it's not like you're being a non-biased person who is saying this kind of thing, right? And
Right.
most of these people who quote what Pushpitaji was saying about the scriptures don't even understand scriptures. They don't know Sanskrit. They can't even read or write Sanskrit. And then they just copy and paste somebody else who has done on Reddit or something, and then they put it out. And
Yeah.
then when you question them, they don't have any idea what you're talking about, right? When I was in one of the hearings, that's basically I asked, that you don't know anything, but you're using our scriptures to talk about us like you know more than we do because somebody translated it for you what it says. You
Yeah.
can't do that. You need to understand what our culture is, where our tradition is, where we come from. Like I can make the same argument about the Western civilization, about the horrible things not just happened in 2000 years ago, but it's happening today, right? But
Yeah.
that's not the point. What is that going to solve? The people are always going to be in a certain level that we need to somehow find a place to get to the same level so we can speak in the same language. But if you somehow think that some people are somehow lower than you, because you've already made up your mind and you've
Yeah.
already decided these people are not worth having a conversation with. What does it take? What does it
Yeah.
take for you to have a conversation with me? Like, what you think that so you truly believe that I'm oppressed and I'm uneducated and I have to be a dark skin and I have to be quiet. So I just come and raise my hand to show who is the Dalit here who accept me, and then I just raise my hand and I be quiet. Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Like we're not cattles, right? We're not lambs. We're not a sheep, and you're not my shepherd. I can be a free thinking person, right? I don't have your college education, but I can clearly and in basic terms, I can explain what is going on. So
Yeah.
if you don't want to hear me, then obviously you're not caring whatever you're trying to do to me. It's all about you.
Apparently, this is the comment, right? I believe that you shared, Pushpitaji. I'm just going to play it so people can hear it for themselves.
This is about Seattle.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So
So
this
see,
is a
I'll
comment that somebody made in support of the Seattle resolution for, including caste as a protected category.
For a militant form of vegetarianism to such an extent that every Jain by birth, which is infamous for a militant form of vegetarianism, to such an extent that everyone and everything that we are ostracized and barred from being touched. I am married to a Dalit woman. My wife is not yet protected from my own family's discrimination because caste is not a protected category in the US.
Oh wow.
So this is quite interesting. Obviously, the fact that she's being, or the lady who she's married to is being discriminated against, that's extremely unfortunate, and we condemn that kind of discrimination, and we express our sympathies with the person who is being discriminated against, obviously. But the problem seems to be is you're saying that discrimination is because there isn't a specific law prohibiting it, but there is a law prohibiting it. There are laws prohibiting discrimination in America. For example, I'll just give the audience an example. There are people of Armenian descent and people of Azerbaijani descent who live in America. Now, everybody knows the bloody history and the level of hate that exists between the Azerbaijani community and the Armenian community. So do we need to pass a specific law to protect the Azerbaijani community or to make the Armenian community a protected category? Do you want to pass a specific law to make the Polish community a protected category who have been historically discriminated against in America? Do you need to pass a specific law to declare Irish people a protected community, or the Italians a protected community? Do you need to pass a specific law to make non-Muslims and non-Christians, or for pagans, for example? Do you need to make pagans a protected category? If you can say that we can find passages within Hindu texts or Dharma Shastras that say, oh, discriminate against so and so caste, then a lot of people can also say that you can find passages within the Quran and the Bible that you would say are discriminatory towards pagans or non-Christians or non-Muslims. So do we need to then have a law specifically that makes pagans a protected category? Like it's like putting a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat and then putting another hat on top of that
we
hat.
don't even have to go to scriptures, Sham. You can look at our own laws that was written in this country 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, how discriminatory it was, right? So this is about, if you're going for this shows how I don't want to say horrible things about this, but this shows how their mindset is. And this particular person who just said that about it, notice that he was not talking about people are discriminating outside. He did not say that they were discriminating in the workplace. He said his family is discriminating against her. What a horrible, disgusting family you must come from for them to do that to you. That's on you, man. That's not us. That's not the whole community. Your family needs to look at themselves in the mirror, including you, who cannot fight for your wife. I'm sorry your wife is going through that, but don't blame it on the entire community. And don't go running to somebody else to protect you, because putting the law on the thing is not going to let your family not discriminate her. That you need to talk to your family and educate them, and whatever you got to do, but that has nothing to do with the community. If you had told me I went to a temple that discriminated me, I am totally with you, man, and then we could do something about it.
And again, that law isn't going to, and you're right, I think, Aldrin, that the law isn't going to stop
the family.
What is the law for? Is the law to throw that family in jail? No, that's not going to happen. If that family has a certain attitude towards another member of the family, the law isn't going to pick them up and throw them in jail, right?
No.
Because there are laws prohibiting racism in America, but if there is racism in, there's an instance of racism or somebody thought there was perceived racism somewhere, you're not going to pick you up and throw you in jail. What they're going to do is, the law is to make sure that you don't face racist behavior or racial discrimination in the workplace or in public life, movie theaters, things like that.
I have a friend
So I think
who is
it's-
married to. I have a friend who is married to a Midwestern person. Their family don't talk to them. Their family constantly say horrible things about my friend, right? Like who's a South Asian. But that doesn't mean that they're going and putting him, because there's a law that says about discrimination, they're going to put him in jail. And the other thing about vegetarianism, regardless of who you are in India, even the Dalits, when we have Haridins and Tyohars, festivals and any god functions, don't eat meat unless it's one particular instance where there is Malaya Amavasya, where you do ancestor worship. That's the only time they do that. But most of the festivals, we don't eat meat, because there is a tradition why we don't do that. But you see, there is no nuance in these people. It's either you're like a horrible, evil, demonic person, just this dissecting people and moving into good and bad. It's mind-boggling, and these are the educated people. And it's a sad part of it. That's what I'm saying.
So I think what I also wanted to point out was what I was getting at earlier is most people don't think this law is an issue because they don't think of themselves as casteist. When we think of casteism, we think of some very specific behaviors. I would advise everybody to listen to the whole hearing. There is a weaponization of normal human behavior and normal human choices that all of us, including other American groups, take for granted. So we pulled this one because of vegetarianism. That was the flavor of the month or the week on the meeting that happened on Tuesday. There were multiple attacks on being vegetarian. And I find that super ironic given this is city of Seattle. This is home of, liberalism. Probably there's a lot of promotion about vegan food and, cutting down on meat, etc. So you can have a vegan lifestyle, you can be paleo, you can be nut free, you can be kosher, you can be halal, you can be lactose free. All of these diets are supported. I'm sure if the city does an event, they actually go through and check all these boxes, which kind of meal do you want. But apparently being vegetarian is now terrible. Vegan, I guess, is fine. But vegetarian is not. And I guess vegetarian only for South Asians. Because I guess if a different ethnicity person is vegetarian,
that's a very nice thing. That's a very good thing.
That would be okay. But, if a South Asian becomes vegetarian, that is now seen as a marker of caste. And this is not coming from any temple or anything. This is coming from the experts. So I think this is why people need to be worried, because these are the folks who will define what is a caste crime and what is not. So are you vegetarian? Are you sending your kids to temple classes on Sunday, or Bal Vihar or Shinmaya, or are you wearing Indian? Are you wearing Indian clothes? Are you wearing a bindi? Are you speaking in your language? And my favorite of all, are you wearing a Janeu? There was somebody on that call who said, my manager gave me a back pat and then after that wouldn't talk to me. And I've always laughed at this Janeu thing because, everyone since people don't go around bare-chested anymore, you're obviously, I don't know, are you like pawing at somebody's shoulder to figure out if they're wearing a Janeu or not?
Yeah.
And if you do
every time you shake somebody's hand, you feel up their back.
Inappropriate touching.
Janeu
right
to
there.
nahi hai.
No, but Janeu to show up onto your neck.
Right? I mean, just imagine a company offsite where you all go and say, "Hey, I'm so and so from this office," and then somebody's like, "Oh, how are you guys? How are you guys?" And then HR will be like, "Dude, what's going on here?" So it's amazing what is
they'll need to create like a device, a metal sensitive device hoti hai na. They'll have to create like a Janeu finder.
Cotton sensitive.
They'll have to measure you. Janeu to nahi hai is pe.
It's only people who don't know how to wear Janeu or have ever seen people wearing Janeu will say something stupid like that. You know how hard it is for you to see Janeu if people are wearing a shirt? Yeah. Janeu doesn't sit over on your neck. Yeah. It's set closer to your shoulder blade. So this is why I get upset. It's just so much nonsense. I mean, it's not even
nonsense. It is nonsense because if you listen to the testimony, it generally evidence of, again, like I said, discrimination is bad, should be tackled. And it does happen, not denying that discrimination doesn't happen. India, here, everywhere. There's discrimination, there's hierarchy, there's oppression, and those should all be tackled. But you don't create new discrimination where to tackle something that is not systemic. And I think that is
Yeah.
the main issue. Is it systemic? The acts of two individuals, the acts of one temple is not systemic.
Mm.
So, the the activists would be the first one to say that, and I would agree with them. You don't take the acts of one individual and put it onto the community. That is the definition of any kinds of phobia, any kinds of stereotyping. Is
Yeah.
an individual is responsible for his or her actions, not the community, right? So let's take the Cisco case, which is at the heart of all of this stuff, right? So case was filed in June of 2020. We are almost in we're getting to like, it's going to be almost 3 years pretty soon from the time that case was filed. Nothing has been proven in that case. 3 years later, nothing has been proven. Yet that one unproven allegation has been used to tar not only the two individuals involved, but
Yeah.
the whole community they come from. And my mind boggles when somebody doesn't see the problem in that, right? I mean, first of all, the fundamental principles of justice mean that those two individuals are innocent until proven guilty. Well, court of public opinion has put them as guilty. Doesn't matter what they are. But more to the point, they've said the whole community they come from, first Hindu Americans, now South Asians, were all guilty of caste discrimination because two people are facing an allegation that has not been proven for years. And again, if you do research on that case, you'll find a lot of holes in that case too. Or one temple is under investigation, and so therefore all temples are guilty. This is classic stereotyping. If one person is guilty, everyone is guilty.
Yeah.
It wouldn't fly for any other community, and it shouldn't fly for us.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. The problem, like I was saying earlier, is that it appears, for me at least, looking from it from the outside looking in, it really does appear that this is a case of a government body trying to decide what a religion is for the people of that religion. And like I said, I'm not a legal expert. We'll have to maybe talk to a legal expert about this at some point, but I feel like it sort of tramples on the religious freedom provided to people here, because I don't think, try I'm just saying, try to do that with the Christian community in the United States. Try to tell them what part of their religion they can believe in and what part of their religion will be outlawed by the federal government or by any city council or something like that. Try to tell the Muslim community that this part of your religion is allowed, this part of your religion is now illegal. It's not going to happen. It's
Well,
just not going to happen.
not only that, they are actually defining what it means to be a Hindu.
Exactly.
Which is
That's
I was
exactly what I'm
talking
trying to
about.
say. Yeah.
Right. Because if you look at the Cisco case, right, the guy accused actually had published a blog. I think when he was in his college. This is all part of court documents. You can go look at it. So in one of his court depositions, he says that he had published a blog in his college days saying that he was an atheist, and he links to it. So now you have, and this is why I think you don't have to be super religious. You don't have to be super, you just have to come from this brown skin and South Asian background to be a target, because this guy is actually, most of us are probably not going to be as have such a clear record of our and non-caste behavior, because in his college days he wrote a blog saying that I don't believe in Hinduism, I'm an atheist officially, etc., etc. So this person can actually have a Hindu identity thrust on himself and be told that you're oppressive because you believe in this Purusha Shaktam, this four, whatever. The state is basically telling him who he is and insisting that he is a Hindu, even though he has been an atheist for his whole working life.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that, you don't have to be religious. You don't have to be very traditional or conservative in your way of lifestyle for this to hit you. Because when I read the court depositions of this gentleman, I don't think he was leading a very, traditional sort of going to mandir and, going, I don't quote me on this, but I think in one of his things, he even wrote that he doesn't go for upnayanams and thinks, whatever, thinks they are casteist. Well, okay, good luck. So, what about those of us who have gone to upnayanams or weddings or whatever?
And I mean, the point is that that's the kind of person that has been accused in this case of being a casteist person.
Yeah, and he hired the person who then basically said, you discriminated against me. So, my point is, most of us may not have such a clean record or such a clear cut recorded record. That's an oxymoron. But that you can trace back and say, boss, I've never done this in my life. Most of us are just living pretty. I mean, I don't know. Most of us are. A lot of us are culturally Hindu more than anything else, or culturally South Asian, whatever the preferred term is. So I think that is why the community needs to realize what's going on. This is not about some and realize how quickly any of them could be in its thrall.
Yeah. One thing I do want to mention, since you talked about the community getting involved, needing to get involved, and I think it's a very, very important point that the community needs to get involved, because what we are seeing right now is Kshama Sawant is a lady of Indian origin by the sounds of it, and she is another politician in a bit of a line of politicians of Indian origin that have been using the Indian community as a punching bag to move ahead in their careers and to get a bit, get pats on the back from their colleagues within the Democratic Party. We saw the example of CoHNA very recently, where I think a couple of years, CoHNA shared an article from one of the people, who's an open white supremacist, according to his blog. He was alleged to be a Christian fundamentalist, Christian supremacist, and who has attacked Hindus in the past with openly racially charged slurs. That guy's article was shared by CoHNA as a, needing to fight back against Hindu nationalism and things like that. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, he shared an article. He did a whole interview with NBC about how the rise of Hindu nationalism is a huge problem and we need to, control it and things like that. And that guy has now been made co-chair of the India caucus of the Democratic Party. So it seems to be that Indian leaders, political leaders, are using the Indian community, bashing the Indian community to get ahead in their careers. It's the same thing that somebody like Pramila Jayapal has done. She's often attacking the Indian community itself. She's often attacking India itself to get more pats on the backs from her colleagues. And it seems that it's a well-trodden path that this lady, Kshama Sawant, is also treading. She's like, well, if shitting on the Indian community is how you get ahead in your career, I'm happy to do it. I'm more than happy to do it. And so I believe that the reason this is happening is because the Indian community is electing people like that, and they're letting people like this get away with acts like this.
Yeah, being passive about it and not reacting to it. And we have to react to it. Can you imagine if those things that they say about us is said to any other community? They would be immediately retract and apologize at the same time, right? But that doesn't happen. But look, I've learned Sanskrit from the so-called Savarna. I have chanted Sanskrit mantras with the Savarna. I have done pujas in my house. I do Shodashopachara puja in my house every Diwali. I invite Indians, and no Indian says, oh my God, let me think about it, because I want to make sure that you're not, you know how many sampradayas we have. Nobody ever say, oh, I cannot go to your place because my sampradaya is this. Nobody says that. Oh, they're willing. They're so happy to come, Yeah. And these people, this is why, and I'm saying, like the Indians, South Asians who live in America, you have to wake up. This is not just about what you think, oh, this is just politics. No, this is going to individually affect you, your children. There are 5,000 jatis in India. 5,000 jatis. Can you imagine the children that are growing up in America has the burden now suddenly have to explain what jati that somebody is coming from, should they be discriminated, not discriminated, should they be called Dalit or non-Dalit? Because some people who belong to backward communities in South are not in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, and vice versa. Who is going to give this certificate of you're a Dalit or non-Dalit when somebody sues you? So tomorrow I can come and sue you and I can say, I'm a Dalit. How are you going to determine if I'm not? If you're going to say that, if you're going to doubt me, I can sue you for saying, how dare you question me, because I'm the oppressed one. You see, these things that they're creating, and I think I think we've been very complacent for a long time now, the Indian community. I think we have to be involved and join places like Kona and educate yourself. You don't have to be like walking down the street carrying a placard saying that Hindus are proud. but at least know yourself. At least you know how to defend yourself. Like the biggest problem that I have is like nobody's complaining about people not eating cat and dog in America, but they're worried about why you don't eat cows.
Yeah.
You see, and that's the question I ask you. Why do you ask me about my dietary restriction that I have? You have dietary restriction. I'm asking, when are you going to serve cat and dog in your restaurants and houses? I don't. If you say I don't eat cat and dog, that's next. Let's go move on. Okay, I'll cook you something else. You come to my house. You're a vegan. Like in Diwali, people come. They're vegans. I make vegan food for them because I want. That's who we are. You know what I mean? In India, people go above and beyond. Indians go above and beyond to make sure that when they invite you to your house, you're taken care of regardless. But these kind of things, if people who are listening, do you understand what I'm saying and you accept what I'm saying? You need to stand up and defend this because this is something it's worth defending. Yeah. And it's only good for you and your children who is going to grow up in America. And they won't be left in.
Add that, it's not just, we just took vegetarianism because that was the latest attack.
Sure.
If you look at it, there's attacks on Holi and Diwali.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to come to that, but you finish first, please.
Yeah. So, so this other thing before we get, the reason this caste narrative has really taken hold in America is because they have been very successful in making a conflation between caste and race. And America has historical guilt about race. Obviously, this is a country, founded on slavery. There's a lot of stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
So there is a historical guilt about race. And unfortunately, equality labs, etc., have been successful in making people think that, caste is race. And so the lower caste you are, the darker, the claim that was made in California's filing against the Cisco, if you're Dalit, you're what triggered Aldrin, Ji. If you're Dalit, you're dark. It's such an absurd conflation. I often wonder, Sham, you should do this. Get a bunch of South Asians on your show and have people rank them by their skin color.
It's funny because it's funny you say that because I was going to bring up a personal anecdote because when I was in I went to college in Delhi University, and when I was in Delhi University, so I'm from Bihar, born and raised in Bihar, and I'm from the Bhumiyar community, which in Bihar are considered upper caste community. I went to college with a Jat. And this Jat was a lot fairer than me. He was basically almost white looking. But Jats are OBCs, declared OBCs, other backward community in India. So this guy who's about 10 shades lighter than me is supposed to be a quote unquote more backward community than mine. So, but if you show that to a Western audience who doesn't know anything, and you tell me who is the higher caste here.
So show them this tweet I just sent to you.
Yeah.
So we were actually talking about some of the ridiculousness of this way, and we had put out a tweet on an academic paper that was published. But one of the things was this conflation of race and jati, and it's like, okay, guess the Dalit here, please. Based on skin color. Very counterintuitive. Who's the Brahmin and who's the Dalit? Now, again, this is not how we think of these very popular film stars. Yeah. Right? I mean, we think of them for the guy is known for his action and, all of that. But I actually discovered he was Brahmin because of researching all of this stuff. So it's kind of weird how I now go hunting.
The other thing also is that, there's so much research out there now. Like if you were willing to look, if you were not ideologically blinkered, like Miss Sawant appears to be, if you were not ideologically blinkered, you would look at these studies which clearly state that the Indians are extremely genetically similar and they form a very distinct group, very different from a lot of other racial groups. They're a very distinct group, but genetically extremely similar to each other. Whether it's the so-called Dravidians from Tamil Nadu or whether it's somebody who's from Kashmir, extremely genetically similar. So the whole thing that somebody who's slightly fairer is upper caste and somebody who's slightly darker is lower caste, it makes absolutely no sense. In the light of scientific evidence, it also makes absolutely no sense.
Shri Krishna is Dalit. Shri Krishna is Dalit.
Dark skinned.
Yeah.
Most of our most popular deities are dark skinned.
Yeah, Krishna, Kali. It's amazing.
Kali is Dalit. Krishna is Dalit. So,
No,
We'll
and
keep on going on.
one of the
No, and
things
I have
I
no
always
problem if they're classified as Dalit.
No,
But
no,
the point is,
but you
they're seen
cannot
as
pick and
revered
choose.
individuals. Yeah.
You don't
Yes.
pick and choose. Say that. Say
Yeah.
that. They worship the Dalit god. Then
Yeah.
say that. Say they
Exactly.
worship Dalit god.
But I
Good,
think
good, good.
this
Good.
is where the lack
Exactly.
of the knowledge of our community comes in, because we assume this guilt when the two main texts that most Hindus read, most Hindus, Ramayana and not even read, hear about Ramayana and
Yeah.
Mahabharata. This is what defines us. This is what our grandparents and village, elders tell us. We don't hear tales from the Manusmriti. You only get to know that later in, high school or whatever. So, who are the authors of the Ramayana and Mahabharata?
Yeah.
In modern day parlance, they would be Dalits, and that's not bad. Nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
So if we were such a casteist society, why have we been revering the words and books authored by people we supposedly despise? That does not
And
happen. It
Ved
just does not
Vyasa,
happen. That's not how human thinks. When you
Ved Vyasa
despise
name,
somebody,
Pushpitaji, Ved Vyasa's real name is Krishna Dvaipayana. Krishna means dark. He was a dark man.
Yeah.
right,
So
right.
he's a Dalit. So Dalit wrote it. Now say it. Say it. Say it. Say those
Yeah.
things, and I admit it.
Yeah. So
No, so we just have a lot of self guilt. And going back to the attacks on the festivals, there is so much ignorance about our festivals that an equality labs can get away with saying Holi is a violent casteist festival. This is an article they wrote. This is the belief of the Holi against Hindutva folks. I mean,
well, the best. My absolute favorite one was when the lady from the Equality Labs went and said Agarwal is an upper caste Brahmin. I was
yes,
like, perfect. Everything's clear how much you know about India.
yeah.
That one tweet explained everything to me.
No, but I think this is where, the second generation starts to get impacted, and
Yeah.
that's where my concern
Yeah.
lies, is that, all three of us are immigrants from India. So we bring a lot of our Indian thinking over. But this stuff doesn't come with an end line.
Yeah.
This is if these laws are passed, they're going to impact South Asians for generations.
Hmm.
So your child growing up here, if they say they don't know caste, they're supposed to be now privileged.
Yeah.
The fact that you don't know something is privilege. Again, that race and caste conflation, because it's the same
Exactly.
thing they say to a white
Well,
person. But
they very smartly jumped on they've associated themselves with the black community who have
yeah,
faced genuine problems in this country,
absolutely,
Yes.
and they said, let's just hitch our wagon to these guys.
No, this
yes,
is the procession of the oppressed. Like you pick one. So the
Yeah.
gay is over. Now the transgender is over. Now the South Asian, who are the horrible human beings that needs to be
But
rectified.
think about the impact this is having on young high schoolers and college kids, which is
Oh
when
yeah.
your sense of I see most of us when we come here, our sense of, even if we come in college or whatever, our sense of identity is shaped. If we face racism, it's obviously horrible, but it doesn't impact us the way it impacts a teenager whose
Yeah.
sense of self is still being formed. And if you're impacted with all these negative messages when you are still kind of figuring out who you are, what your roots are, it shapes you for life.
Yeah.
And that is exactly, we have actually at Kona, we've counseled many young people who have actually been traumatized by the kind of attitudes their friends subject them to, because it's almost uncontested now. If you try to, and forget contesting the narrative, if you don't buy into the narrative, then you get picked on, because contesting is a big step. If you just
Yeah.
try to say, boss, I'm not going to engage with this, you say, or and remember, social media is very big, especially the last three years of the pandemic. The virtual world was the real world for everybody, and we actually had kids who lost friends. We had a teenage girl who lost her best friend because she wouldn't like that person's Insta post. And
Wow.
that, I know it sounds frivolous, but social
Yeah.
capital is a very big thing for
Yeah.
teenage girls.
Yeah.
And so this person was traumatized, and so what is happening is an increasing number of Hindu teenagers and South Asian teenagers are embracing an identity or a thinking that is negative or disdainful towards their roots, because it's too tough to fight the narrative. They don't even see a lot of information that helps them. So they're just like, yeah, I mean, okay, it sounds like I come from a terrible community. It looks like we have some genetically oppressive gene built into us, which needs to
Yeah.
be brought out, or we need some extra punishment or whatever. So this is really serious stuff that goes beyond whatever our, us from being from first generation from India may be.
Yeah.
And this, you think your grandkids, your great grandkids, once a law is passed, laws don't come with expiry dates. So
Yep.
this is going to haunt you for the next several generations. So the community just needs to realize what's going on. They need to take action, because at the end of the day, this is a democratic country, and if you don't speak, you have to speak up and define yourself. Now, Kona, I mentioned, as an advocacy organization, which means we have been going, and education and advocacy, those are the two things we do. In the past 3 years, I have talked to dozens of lawmakers at different levels, and most of them represent sizable communities from South Asia. And the overwhelming feedback I have got is, wow, thanks for connecting with us, because we didn't know and we never hear from you guys. So
Hmm.
when we don't speak for ourselves, we
Yeah.
are letting other people define who we are. I know we're busy. Everyone's busy. We are living in two worlds. We're managing our stuff in India. We have family, kids, jobs, etc. But guess what? So is everybody else.
Yeah.
Every community in the world has that same 24 hours and that same struggle between family, work, life, travel. Everything is the same. So
Yeah.
it's something you have to prioritize. And if you don't prioritize, there's no point in bewailing later, which I think gets
Yes.
me to my pet peeve, is like, they're very reactionary. So a year ago in 2021, when that dismantling global Hindutva happened, massive uproar among the community, and everyone was up in arms. How can universities do this? How is it possible? Well, it's possible because you don't engage.
Didn't say anything. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then we go through these blips of outrage. So for
Yeah.
2 months, everyone was up in arms. And I said it in August. I said, August 2021, everyone is outraged. I'd love to see how many people are still outraged and focused on this in November or December of 2021.
Yeah.
We just sort of go back to our lives, and we are facing a professional set of activists whose job it is to do this.
Yeah.
Now, if you are a product manager or an engineer, you never stop doing your job, right? Even after Diwali is over, you come back and do your job.
Yeah.
Uh, so the community has to realize that this is not going to stop unless we also take it seriously, and we start getting involved, and and we're not asking for any special privileges. That is the ironic part. We're literally saying, boss, don't talk about us without us. Don't make laws that discriminate against us. Give us the same thing that we are entitled to under American law, under state law, under Canadian law, and give us the exact same treatment you give others. But doing that gets you painted as oppressive, as Hindu nationalist, as
Yeah.
casteist, as fascist, all these labels that are then used to silence you. And that happens because not enough of us are speaking out.
Yeah,
So
and one thing I want to
yeah.
add to what we are talking about. See, I love Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, but also our sages have taught us about in the Hitopadesha what is a Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It gives an example of a jackal and a deer. So we have to be careful about we going and walking around nonchalant saying Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Understand what Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam means. If somebody does not bring happiness, content in the community, they're not a Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. They're a
Right.
jackal coming in the guise of trying to be a deer. So
Right.
it's okay for you to be a deer and accepting of things, but you have to understand other people's nature as well. And you don't have to blame them, but you have to understand what the nature is so you can act accordingly. And this
Yeah.
is important. If we don't do it, you are basically throwing your children, and read that Hitopadesha about the jackal and the deer about the Vasudhaiva Kutumba. You're throwing your children into these people because what is going to? They're not going to be able to defend themselves. They're going to ask
Yeah.
these questions about why are you so militant vegetarian. They're not going to ask why you're militant about not eating dog and cat.
Yeah.
They're just going to say, yeah, I wonder why. And of course, then they're going to start eating. I'm not saying don't eat or eat meat, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying that you have a certain thing that is. You don't have to be ashamed about it or not being able to explain it. So that's why it is important you teach your children to stand on their own, and whatever the decision that they make, nobody ever in Hinduism ever says don't do that, because you have to follow your swadharma, and that's basically is very important.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole discussion on meat, I know we spent a lot of time, but Hinduism also has the Shakta tradition.
Yeah.
There are very few vegetarians in that. So again, it's this slice of reality that they just want to superimpose and homogenize a very, very diverse faith. I mean, they're the ones.
There are Kashmiri Hindus and there are Hindus from the
Kashmiri
northeast
Brahmins,
who
Bengali
routinely eat
Brahmins.
meat. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
totally.
I eat meat. I eat meat, and my
Yes, I
family
eat
gives
meat too.
bali, which means
Yeah.
they give sacrifice. And
Yeah.
I dare anybody to come to my family and say you cannot sacrifice.
Exactly.
Come from equality
And
lab
that
and tell my family you cannot sacrifice an animal in front of our kula devata. I will tell you what we're going to tell you about it.
Yeah.
Come and do it.
and, and see that fundamentally is the issue, that you're homogenizing a faith that has basically been extremely diverse. I think the only thing I say as a Hindu activist is that it's very diverse. I will only speak from my personal lived experience,
Hmm.
but I can say that, because the experience of everyone else is different. But now you have the state saying that to be Hindu is to have a caste, to be Hindu
Yeah.
is to be vegetarian, to be Hindu is to
How
wear
do
this
we
religion.
assign a caste to white converts to Hinduism or black converts to Hinduism? What caste do we give them?
Mixed, what about mixed race kids?
What
What
about
about
mixed race kids?
adopted kids? I
What
mean,
do we say to
where,
them? Yeah.
yeah, it kind of reminds me of the rule in America. America's had some pretty racist and dangerous laws in the past. And again, I advise the Indian community to go read up about them, because they have been used dangerously in the past, and that's why they need to be fought.
Yeah.
So in Seattle, and Seattle is just the start. So you have to remember the way this process has been rushed. They didn't put it. Seattle City normally wants an ordinance to go through a committee. There has been no public hearing on this. There has only been a few city meetings, but this was not on the agenda. So people just would call in and speak on the public comment, even though it was not an agenda. And at the last meeting on Tuesday, I think 100 or 200, and because I know somebody was speaker 190.
Yeah.
They called in and they waited for an hour and they didn't get a turn to speak, because there's always the preferred set of folks who get to speak.
Yeah.
And if Seattle passes this, you think this is the end? Of course not.
No.
They will take their win in Seattle and they will go to every city in the country, every state in the country. So this whole structure remember, this whole structure is built up on one allegation that has not been proven. If you look at the Seattle ordinance, what does it offer as proof? The Equality Lab survey, which we've talked about a lot, the Seattle lawsuit, the BAPS lawsuit, so these are the three evidences. Then it says policies passed in Cal State University and UC Davis. Well, Cal State University and UC Davis used Cisco
Yeah.
as the reason. So this whole thing is resting on, if you start to peel
One
apart the
unproven
layers,
case. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it all started with one unproven allegation that one university used, then the next university used that unproven allegation and that university to build a third university. So it's like this pyramid building on itself, and they won't stop at Seattle. They're going to come for everything.
Yeah.
So this is, you're not
So
safe wherever you
the
are.
last thing I wanted to ask you guys, both of you, before we wrapped, was we've gone over what the problem is. We've gone over why this is a very serious issue, because it has the ability to impact Hindus all over the country and impact many generations going forward as well. We've talked about how that there are politicians that are using the Hindu community as a punching bag to bolster their own careers, because the Hindu community hasn't been active enough or maybe hasn't paid it enough attention. So what can the community do? So from this podcast, what do we want people to take away as actionable points? What can they do to either fight this resolution or to continue to fight for the community and against its demonization, down the line?
Absolutely. You can do both. Easiest thing, literally no reason for somebody not to do this. I'll send you a link. We are running a campaign where one click email will say, where you click on it, you give your info, and you send an email to all the 10 councillors of Seattle City,
Okay.
registering why you want them to vote no. And thousands have already done this. I think we've sent like 15, 16,000 emails on this
Wow.
already. I don't have the final count. So there is absolutely no reason for every user in US and Canada not to do this. This is
Yeah.
not a Seattle specific issue, like I said. So do that and get 5 of your friends, colleagues, family to do it as well. The second thing is, if you are part of a organization, whether it's a business organization, a temple, a religious organization, a school, whatever, and you can, again, there is another letter that asks for support from organizations. If you are an office bearer, not an individual, not a volunteer, not a member, you can have your organization start, but really do it as an individual. And then the one thing is, like I said, this is not a one-off. So one petition is not going to fix it. Join in, do what Aldrin did. He discovered us on a show a year ago and is now, you don't have to go as far as Aldrin. He is, amazing and inspirational. But each of you needs to be become like organize and become part of an institution. Obviously, I would push Kona. I think that's the best way. But if you don't, there are other places too. Speak up and organize and speak up collectively, because this is the country where you need to speak up as an organization. That makes a huge difference. So obviously, I will say join Kona, volunteer, or if you don't have time, donate. At the end of the day, we say we're a very rich community. We don't have a political voice to match our supposed economic success at all.
Yeah.
And this is actually another thing the community has done for itself. A very dangerous position where you're economically well off and politically friendless or orphaned. This is one of the worst situations you can be in. We've brought it on ourselves. We need to fix it. So I would just say, sign the petition and become part of the Kona movement, because this is really about all of us. I was an average tech worker a few years ago, and just being involved has made me realize what's happening. You can just do it at whatever level feels comfortable to you. So our website is CoHNA.org, the Coalition of Hindus of North America, and you can put the link to the petition in the description.
Okay. Yeah, I will make sure to do that. Anything to add, Aldrin?
Yeah, so I just want to say, it's a delusion to think that there's a benevolent society, right? In each society, people have to assert themselves and to make sure that their rights are respected, their opinions are respected. When you don't do that, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for everything. So I think we need to make sure that you and your children, if you truly want to be a part of the society and people respect you, you really need to stand up and say, hey, what about my rights? And these are my rights I want to protect, because nobody's going to come and give it to you in a platter.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that you give right education to your children so that they can defend themselves when they go in the world and not become on the other side, because that's the big problem that we are having right now. Because when you can't defend yourself, of course, you're just going to think, if you're not aggressively part of it, you'll passively be part of it. Yeah. So I think it is very important. Kona has a beautiful program for parents and children. You don't have to go to Kona. There are many beautiful organizations that create a lot of contents, and by being a part of an organization, you will be at least aware, and you will have some knowledge. And what you do with it and how you're going to think about it, that's a different story. But be a part of it, so at least you will be updated on what's going on day-to-day basis. So we're not sleeping during the time when they come and just pilfer just like what they did before. Yeah. So we should not recolonize ourselves and allow them to recolonize ourselves, because we as a community is a big resource for the world, the entire world. We can be a model society, and we should make sure that it is worth protecting. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say we owe it to our kids to give them the same benefits we got from the ecosystem that we grew up in. It's almost a duty to make sure you shepherd it and pass it on. And standing up for yourself and asking for equality for yourself does not make you discriminatory or casteist or oppressive of anyone else. Equality is beautiful, and discrimination needs to be tackled everywhere else without creating more discrimination.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was very well put. And hopefully people that watch this video, that watch this podcast, get something useful out of it. And if you feel the way the three of us do about this issue, if you see the problem here, if you see the slippery slope here, if you see the danger going forward, please sign the petition. Please get involved politically. Start voting for politicians that really will look after your interests. Start funding those politicians. Use your money and your vote extremely wisely. Because you have the benefit of being a rich community, a community that at least has money to spare. There are politicians coveting your vote. Make sure your money just doesn't go down the drain, that you vote for politicians or you fund politicians that are plotting your own downfall. So please support organizations like Kona. Check out the link in the description, and please sign the petition. Make sure the city of Seattle hears your voice before this resolution comes to pass. And other than that, guys, you can follow Kona as well. The link to that will be provided in the description of this video also. Thank you again, Pushpitaji and Aldrin, for joining us and enlightening us about this issue.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, guys. As usual, if you like it, please like, share, subscribe. This is an important issue. If you want this to, if you want to spread the awareness about this issue, share it with more and more people as well. If you don't like us, please abuse us in the comment section. It still helps us out in the algorithm. So, yes, abuse is also welcome. Other than that, we'll see you for the next one. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.